Well, President Biden will head to Wisconsin today for a campaign event and to sit down for his first TV interview since his rough debate performance. This comes less than 2 weeks before former President Donald Trump is expected to be nominated at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee. We're also tracking growing calls for President Biden to step down from the race over concerns over his cognitive health. Joel Payne and Marc Lotter join me now to discuss all of this. Joel is a CBS News political contributor, Democratic strategist, and chief communications officer for Move On. Marc is the chief communications officer at America First Policy Institute and former director of strategic communications for the Trump-Pence campaign. Happy to have both of you. So, Joel, can you just lay out for us how crucial the next 24, 48, 72 hours are for the president?
Look, I think we're in a critical period for the president and his campaign to stabilize, to allay concerns about, obviously, what was a subpar debate performance last week. I will say I do think I'm getting the sense that Democrats are going to give the president the space here to demonstrate the path forward. Obviously, he's got a big national interview today that I think a lot of people will be watching. He's got the big campaign event in Wisconsin that you're mentioning. And I think the polls, including the CBS poll that showed him down a few points, were not good for sure. But I don't know if they were so drastic that Democrats immediately said this is untenable. And I think that's actually something that's interesting. You know, I think Donald Trump, you'd imagine for someone who, allegedly won that debate by what he won that debate by, I would imagine he'd be better than +2 over Joe Biden right now. And if I was a Republican, I guess I'd be a little bit concerned about that if this is the high watermark for Donald Trump.
Marc, do you agree? I mean, we know the former president did have a good week with the SCOTUS decision and, of course, the fallout from the debate. Do you agree that he should be polling more than 2, I guess, if you want to look at New York Times, as high as 6 points ahead?
Well, when you look at the Real Clear Politics average, the lead has doubled from 1.5% to now more than 3% in just the last week. But I think we're oversimplifying it. Joe Biden was losing this election before the debate. He was losing on all the policies. He was losing the national popular vote. He was losing in every swing state, not just 1 or 2. And now the map is growing even bigger. And it's all growing in favor of Donald Trump. So what was already a problem for Joe Biden heading into the debate just made it even worse and accelerated the movement away from Joe Biden and toward Donald Trump.
Joel, the president told governors that he needs to get more sleep and curtail public events and meetings that begin after 8 p.m. Is that going to assuage their fears or reignite them?
Probably not the messaging I would have led with, Marc. I don't know about you. I don't know if that's the messaging you would have gone with. But I take the president's point, and I think probably what the president is saying is, I'm going to have to manage this campaign differently. I think that was acknowledging some mistakes maybe in preparation, in a very busy whirlwind schedule over the last month. Unlike Donald Trump, who's spending a lot of his time on golf courses, he's actually presidenting. Joe Biden is. He's at the G8. He's international meetings. He's at D-Day. He's trying to solve the crisis in Gaza. So it's busy along with a full campaign schedule. So I think what the president is trying to allay concerns about is, I am going to make a concerted effort to carve out more time to focus on campaigning.
Marc, according to a recent CNN poll, Vice President Kamala Harris is closer to Trump than Biden in a hypothetical head-to-head race. Does Trump have an interest in keeping Biden in this race?
I don't think it really matters either way, because no matter who's at the top of the Democrat ticket, it's not like they're going to change policies. They hate American energy. They want us all to drive EVs. They're anti-Israel. They're pro-open border. All the things that led to Joe Biden losing this race.
I'm going to stop you right there, Marc, because I don't think it's fair to our viewers to just blanket policies, say that Americans aren't in support of those policies. I think it's fair to say, as a conservative, that you don't agree with those policies.
Well, 65% of the American people don't believe in those policies if you look at the polling averages, and none of those policies are going to change, whether it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer. You can put whomever you want in there. The policies that the American people have largely rejected, 2/3 of the American people think we're headed in the wrong track. None of that's going to change, no matter who the Democrats put up.
Marc, what would you say, though, to voters who, yes, may have those concerns as well, but they are also concerned with maybe some of the statements that the former president has been making about the issues that he would first confront in office? I mean, he's been running, I think it's accurate to say, on a retribution campaign, and people have some serious concerns about that.
Well, I don't think that's true at all. He even said on the debate stage, and he has said afterwards, that America's success will be the revenge. That is the ultimate revenge of actually getting back to policies that work, and that will be his retribution. Look, I mean, we know all the scare tactics they're going to use. They've been trying to use them over and over again for years. But right now, the American people don't like high prices. They don't like the wars that are raging in the Middle East and in Europe. They don't like the 12 million illegal immigrants streaming across our southern border,
which is at an all-time low. I want to get to Joel real quick, because Joel, I want to see if you have any comments on what Marc is saying, and also if you have any comments on Democratic lawmakers on background talking about this versus on the record.
Oh, listen, I would imagine a lot of what you're going to see is on background, because there's a lot of deference to the top of the ticket. It happened with Republicans 8 years ago when Donald Trump was on the ropes with his nomination. So that's not surprising. I think to what Marc is saying, and listen, there's a critique of both of these candidates, and both of the opposing sides will make it. I think the opening for Democrats is how Donald Trump also sounded on that debate stage, and how he has sounded since then, and how his surrogates, folks like Kevin Roberts at Project 2025 and other Republicans, they scare the American people with very extremist ideas. And it's up to Democrats to lift those ideas up and to frame this as a choice. I think where Joe Biden struggled last week is he lost the thread. He lost the focus on making it a choice between Donald Trump and Joe Biden in terms of what future do you want? And I think that's what Joe Biden and Democrats are going to need to get back to.
Marc, do you think that the former president would want to debate again?
Well, he said yesterday he'd do another debate as soon as possible. No holds bar, make it an actual debate, old school style. I don't think that Joe Biden's going to want to debate Donald Trump again, and definitely not before the September debate. But, you know, he put it out there. He said he would do it. We'll see if the Biden camp accepts it.
Joel, last thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think Joe Biden probably needs to do another debate for a couple of reasons. One, to kind of cleanse the palate a little bit, just to be candid with you. But also, look, the debate strategy was something that came from his side. I do think Joe Biden probably, what you will see is a different strategy, along with the energy that obviously wasn't there last week. I think a lot of Democrats take issue with how he actually went at Donald Trump's arguments, the way that he went at them, talking more about stats as opposed to lived experience. And I think if Joe Biden does get back on the debate stage, I think you'll just see a different approach overall.
Joel Payne and Marc Lotter, thank you.